We're on the 16th episode of the Transformation Podcast. We've got Mr. Jason Hayes.
Jesse.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, excited.
Jason was another one of my roommates in Costa Rica with Mike, who we had on a few episodes ago. I'm really happy that you made the time to do this. And I want to say before we start, I've been reflecting on this podcast a lot. I've had a couple cancellations this week, and I haven't gotten to do this for about 5 or 6 days. And what I'm realizing is how important this has been for my mental health. So you doing this has been it was like a godsend because I had a friend who was going to be on literally last night, and he said he was sick, and I was thinking to myself, crap, man, I haven't done this for about a week. And then you texted me 10 minutes after he texted me.
Mhm.
I'm not kidding you.
Uh,
There's another one of those things, one of those coincidences, if you want to call it that. There are no such thing. But you must have been on the same wavelength as me or something when you sent me that text. So thank you for hopping on.
you're giving me cold chills over here because I've been busy and I've honestly put this off a little bit. You hit me up, I think, after your first podcast, and yesterday I was driving somewhere after work, and all I listen to is the music from Rhythmia anymore. It takes me back to that place probably more than anything, and I was like, you need to just do this. One, for Jesse, because I can tell that this is something for you, and for me, because it'll be good for me to go back through this with you and help bring me back to the place that I want to be. So I was very much thinking about you yesterday when I texted you, just what you said. So it's hitting home with me as well.
5 minutes in.
Yeah.
All right, awesome, man.
Yes.
Well, I'm going to allow you to tell your story. Why don't you kind of share with me what your path was to Rhythmia before you got there?
Yeah. So, I'm very fortunate. My wife went to Rhythmia a couple years ago. She struggled with PTSD and anxiety and some different things, and had a kind of an enlightening moment that paired with this. And then she said, I want to go do this ayahuasca and Rhythmia. At the time, I didn't even know what ayahuasca was. I was like, whatever, if you think it'll help you, I'm down with it. And when she came home, she was a different person. No anxiety. I'm super happy and just, loving and just a 180-degree turn on her. And she told me a lot about it. It sounded really weird. I didn't get it. And she said, "Look, I think it would be really good for you, but I can't tell you need to go. You got to figure it out on your own." And so you fast forward a couple of years, and I had thought about it on and off. But I've struggled with some anger issues and some different sexual addiction issues and stuff over my life, and the anger issues were coming more prominent, specifically with my wife and kids. Um, and my wife's like, "Hey, like you got to get this together, or we have to go to counseling or figure something else out." And I just did some internalization and said, "You know what? I think I need to go to Costa Rica and do ayahuasca. Like, how do you feel about that? Because it's not cheap, it's an investment."
Yeah.
And she was fully supportive. So, I called him up and set something up to do it. I've done psychedelics probably twice my whole life. And so to go and do it for 4 days in a row was quite a leap for me. Um, but yeah, I think, those were the main things. I mean, we all, I'll be 45 here in 2 weeks, so we all develop some level of trauma at that point. But, I've had some, sexual abuse as a child and lots of infidelity on my side, and I think some of that's developed into some anger issues at this point in my life. And the funny thing is, it's only with my family. Everybody I work with is like, "What are you talking about? You're so chill. You're so calm." Um, but the people I care about the most are the ones that piss me off the most, which is
Yeah.
the most
I can see that.
counterintuitive thing ever. But yeah, so that's what kind of initiated things for me is really being upfront that I needed to change some things.
Yeah. So you ended up getting to Rhythmia, and we you got there I think a day before I did, or maybe half
With a
the
few
day,
hours,
a
yeah, it
few
was
hours,
earlier in the day, same day though, yeah,
because you were able to do that first breath work class,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. And just for context, for anybody that's listening that didn't hear Mike and I's episode, we came after the breathwork class, so we didn't meet right away, but we did see your suitcase in the room, so we knew that there was going to be a third person. So we first met each other, I think, after that breathwork class that night, and I think all of us were thinking to ourselves like, what? First of all, we're sharing this room with these strangers. Second of all, what are we in for this week? What are we going to go through? And I think that was the initial shock for me when I got the calendar or the schedule of what the week was going to be like. I thought it was going to be just sit back, relax, and go at night and go through what you're going through. And these classes, I had no idea, but it turns out that the classes were the most pivotal part of the whole experience because they kept you on a track of healing. It was like almost like a rehabilitation boot camp. That's the best way to put it. So,
Yeah.
you're dealing with these issues when you get there, and you kind of have an idea of what you're going to go through because your wife had experienced it prior. What before going to ceremony, but like that first introduction class that Meg hosted, what after that class, what were your thoughts or uh, opinions going into that first night after that class and that breathwork class before this first ceremony? What were your expectations?
Yeah, well, I'll kind of back up a little bit. I first got there and there were some delays. I think you and I had mentioned, or you may have mentioned with Mike on that podcast, the time change had occurred. So I almost missed my flight because my alarm was set right when the time changed. It
Yeah.
really messed me up. But I got to Rhythmia a bit frantic. They're like, okay, we have just enough time. You can go do your medical check and then you can go to that first breathwork class. And I get there and my blood pressure was high on the med check because I was just so anxious and so nervous. I'd been running for like what felt like all day at that point.
Yeah.
Um, and then when we met up, I think it was after the breathwork class, after dinner, I was like, "Hey, does anybody know where this room is?" And you and Mike turned around like, "Hey, you're with us." And so that was how I met you guys and knew who my roommates were. So yeah, so the first breathwork class I think is important to add before we go into that is, one thing my wife's always got on to me is I don't cry unless somebody dies, and even then it's somewhat debatable. And here I am, the very first night, a couple hours into being there, we're doing breath work. I don't know what to expect. It feels a little weird that I'm just hyperventilating over here, essentially. And I just start bawling. I mean, just tears running down my face. And I think that's when some of it hit me of like, holy shit, what's going on in this place? Because I felt a little bit emotional before we went, and they talk about you start the journey, once you sign up or whatever. Um, so, obviously still a little like, yeah, I don't know what to expect here, but yeah, we go through the classes, they talk a little more about it. I still really don't, at that point know what to expect because everybody has different experiences. Some stuff good, some stuff bad. I heard some stuff from my wife. There were some people that had been there before telling some stories, and it just seems like everything's different for everybody. And so high anxiety really for me going into that first night, just the unknown, really. And again, having very minimal psychedelic experience up to that point. So yeah, that was for me. I mean, obviously hopeful that that this works, that something happens. And then obviously more to come when we get to the first medicine session there. But But yeah, just a lot of anxiety, really, and it physically came out. Like I said, when I had the med check, my blood pressure was high, and I've never in my life had high blood pressure.
I had the same thing when I got checked out too. They had to take it a second time just because for the first time ever
Same.
my blood pressure was high as well. And maybe that was just the change of altitude, flying all day. It could be, I guess, a number of reasons. One word that I remember, or one theme I remember from your week, and maybe we can get into this on night one, was the word loop. You talk about being in a loop a lot, and I I didn't experience that week. What was that loop part of your first night, or was that all week? I'm
That was
unsure.
night two and night four. I will never forget that. Um, but which, more than happy to get in there. Or we want to go through night one first
Yeah,
and kind
let's
of
go
talk
through night
through that.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't remember all the questions. The first one they tell you to ask with your intentions is show me who I've become. Um, do you remember the other two? One of them's like heal me back with myself or
So it was show me who I've become. Uh, Something to do with the split. I'm now forgetting,
yeah.
but I
Yeah, and
remember
then
the
bring
third
me
one
back
was
together, right? Yeah.
yes, yeah.
With-
The
Yeah.
second one had something to do with where the split. What merge my soul back at all
Yeah, yeah.
costs? Was that it?
Yes.
Yeah.
So my night one, I took a drink, laid there for an hour with my blindfold on. Nothing happened. Went and got the second drink. Nothing happened. I think I threw up somewhere in there. Third drink, nothing happened. I think my fourth one I threw up and went back up and like I immediately purged it. And so I was laying there and I was like, I'm not the most patient person and I'm getting frustrated that this isn't working. And I bet I gotta wait till tomorrow. Like it's showing me that I need to be patient because they always tell you it's going to give you what you need, not what you want. And I remember being kind of pissed off, to be honest with you. Like you're in this subconscious thought, and I remember them saying like talk to yourself, and so I was like, show me who I've become. And internal dialogue to myself was, you already know who you are. I don't need to tell you that. And I was like, this isn't what it's supposed to be. Like it was just me like thinking in my head, but the answer came to me. And I was like, just show me, like, give me something. And it was like, look, you already fucking know who
Yeah.
you become. And I'm like, okay, this isn't it. And so I was laying there debating on getting a fifth drink. And then all of a sudden I started making weird noises. I was like doing just weird things like that. I was like, all of a sudden I was like, why am I doing that? Like, I never do that. Like, what is this? And then it started doing more, and then I started to see visually. And again, I've got eyes completely covered with a sleep mask. But what ended up happening is I could see it was kind of like a panoramic, like almost a 180-degree view where I could turn left and right. And it was just like the most vivid dream almost. And I started seeing little images and things from my life. And the first real thing, and I wondered throughout this, my mom passed away about a year and a half ago, and I was like, I wonder, if I have any experience with my mom. And I remember thinking I was in the room with my mom towards the end at my parents' house, and I could see that I was going to see her, but then I realized that I wasn't like at the foot of the bed looking down at my mom. I was laying where my mom was. I was, in fact, in my mom's body, if you will, in that experience. And my dad was not a good caregiver without going too deep into that. But I remember him kind of coming off to the peripheral to tend to her, give her medicine or something, and she was trying to push him away. And I physically was doing this and making loud noises similar to what did. I won't repeat to not embarrass myself anymore.
Yeah.
But I remember one of the helpers came over and was like, "Hey, like you gotta quiet down." And so I stopped making the noises, but my hand gestures of pushing away that negative energy got like stronger and more rapid. And all of a sudden I sat straight up and just purged the biggest purge I had into my bucket. Um, and obviously felt better. And I laid back down, um, and I saw my mom's kind of soul rise up above her body, and I could see her from a vantage point versus me being in her body how it was before. But for me, what I took from that was, I was maybe kind of healing some pain and feeling some pain that my mom was going through there with my dad, and it was um, kind of a uncomfortable feeling, the negative energy, but it was also a beautiful feeling of seeing my mom's soul come up and being able to, I could like reach up and feel her, not in like a physical, like I could touch you, but it was like almost like an energy I could feel above me.
Right.
Um, so that was really cool. My brother passed away when I was 17, and I was like, I really want, can I experience that same thing? Is kind of what I was thinking. And I went through to the point I saw him in the hospital. It was in an accident. I saw him after he had passed away in the hospital. And a similar experience, not as detailed. This was back when I was 17 years old, so it's been a long time. Um, but kind of similar thing. And I remember trying to move my mom and my brother's souls together, thinking like they've been away for so long. I want them to be together. And then that kind of quickly faded away and went through good and bad things in my life and was moving energy with my hands, like pushing bad things away. I came into my house. I was physically in my house that night. I could see my wife laying in bed. I stroked her back, kind of pushed away bad energy, things that I've done bad from her to kind of heal her. Did the same with my kids. There was a lot of time I was in Costa Rica, obviously, and in my house. I was in my kids' room, touching them, kind of protecting them, healing them from past trauma that I may have given them from being angry or not interacting with them enough. Um, just really like so visual and so real. I remember one moment that I really chuckled. I don't know if you remember Raven. She was an older woman there that helped. She
Yeah.
had the two dogs, and one of her dogs sleeps under our bed. And one of the things I dealt with that night is I get angry at my dogs because they go to the bathroom in the house and they're old. And I was making that right, in my visions there. And at one point, the dog in Costa Rica was outside, and I heard my dog in the bedroom bark, and that dog barked. They like barked at each other.
Oh my
So
God.
crazy. My wife, when I was telling her the story, she's like, "You're not going to believe this, but that dog wouldn't sleep last night. Was up, and I had to let it out several times, and like, just really, you know, coincidental."
Yeah.
Type of things. But yeah, just lots of visuals that first night. Really, nothing felt bad. And when I got done, I felt like the reason I asked you the questions, I felt like I had gone through all three. It showed me the bad things I did. I feel like I healed those things and kind of came united. And one thing I thought was really interesting, my wife gets on to me about looking at women. And I remember when I would visualize somebody that I had looked at before, I would hear somebody in the room throw up, like just wretched throw up. And I had this strong association with looking at other women and this horrible sound and bodily, you know, expel there. And it kind of helped show me like, hey, those are, those are bad things, and it was really interesting just all throughout how what happens in Costa Rica externally and what happens in your brain are so interconnected. Um, but yeah, I would say that was most, but I woke up thinking, man, that was way too easy. I went through all three things in one night, nothing bad happened. um, I felt like I was healed in one night.
Yeah.
Um, future nights told otherwise, but
You were talking about how your you were in your house while you were in Costa Rica, and it kind of reminded me of something that I've been looking into the last couple weeks. As you probably know, or maybe you've heard through our chats or our group chats, I've been doing a lot of different meditations. And I learned about this meditation called like a remote viewing meditation. Have you have you heard of it?
No, not really.
Okay. Well, I've been watching some videos online about people that are using it for different purposes. Like they will put a picture of Antarctica in front of them and then they'll bring it to their body and then they'll go into a deep meditation and what they call remote viewing, all of a sudden your astral body, and I think actually trying to remember his name at Sean. Sean was talking about astro walking with Prince, right? That your astral body goes to Antarctica. This is just an example. And it begins looking around and exploring Antarctica. And on the surface, if you haven't gone through these things, you just sound like a nut. But after going through what we went through and you talking about what you talked about, it sounds like to me that you had a remote viewing experience without trying to do that. And it just goes to show how powerful the mind really is and how much of it that we don't use. It's almost like a muscle that you should work out on a daily basis, just like anything else, whether it's your biceps, your abs, your jaw, your legs, walking every day. It seems like meditation is like that half hour exercise that the rest of your body gets.
Yeah, I agree, and I think I've done some meditation since I've been back, and in different forms, not necessarily sitting legs crossed with my hands on my knees per se. I have done that, but I think you're right. I mean, it's a good relaxation technique, and again, I'll listen to the music, and I can go back to Costa Rica or go different places, a lot different than probably when I was in ayahuasca. But I think me and my wife talk about several different things along this line, and our minds are designed to filter and see certain things just like animals and different creatures can see or hear different than we can. I think we live with these parameters that this is the world we live in and that time is real and all these things, but there's nothing that says that you can't be in more than one place at a time or that time really exists the way that we think it is. Those are constraints that we've put on ourselves as humans. And the reality is there might be more tied to spirituality and to Mother Earth and to where we are physically or psychologically, or maybe this whole thing's a dream. Me and my wife were talking about that last night. Maybe this is a dream like we felt like ayahuasca was, or maybe the ayahuasca part was real. Like, it's hard to say.
Yeah. It almost is somewhat like I was talking about earlier yesterday where I was thinking about what am I going to do? And then you texted me 10 minutes later. I was
Yeah,
sending out that frequency and you somehow replied to that frequency. So,
yeah,
or vice versa, how
sure. Yeah.
goes two ways, right? Just
Either
like a
way,
phone
there
call.
was some connection there, right?
Yeah.
And again, people will say there's coincidences, and the more I see things like that, and you're more cognizant of those things, you realize that they're not coincidences because they happen a lot more frequently if you're paying attention to them. Kim talked about that a lot there is paying attention to the universe as she referred to it. But yeah, I think there's way more signs or connections with things in life than what we realize. We just got to stop and pay attention to them sometimes and listen to them.
Speaking of coincidences, um, tell me if you think this is a coincidence or not. I just learned about this. I know I've heard it before, but I never have actually dived deep into it, and I want to do it either this weekend or next weekend. Play Dark Side of the Moon after the lion growls on Wizard of Oz, and the whole CD syncs up with the movie, the lyrics, and everything. Have you ever heard that before? It's like a common thing online, and I never knew about it. And
Yeah.
I've watched some Roger Waters, the lead singer of Pink Floyd, some interviews of people asking him about it, and he
Mm-hmm.
says pure coincidence.
Mm.
And I just totally random and out of left field, wondering if you had heard about it because I literally
Yeah,
just learned about this. But
interesting.
I agree with you on coincidences. There is no such thing. And I was just actually having this chat with a buddy who recently got divorced, and he's like 7, 8 months separated at this point. He's going on a couple of dates here and there. And I told him, first of all, you have to make sure you're completely healed before you go out into the dating world. And if we want to speak about coincidences, because you might have that fear of missing out on that one girl that, messages you, so to speak, while you're still healing. I said, your journey will eventually come together with somebody else's journey. And that person that you're going to spend your life with could actually maybe still be married right now and is going through a separation, and you happen to meet 5 years from now. So I think it's important, set the coincidence aside, allow fate to take care of your future, and just continue to work on yourself. Because as you work on yourself and you become more strong, you also become more desirable. All right, night two. Here we go. So you had gone through what's this whole thing sounds like to me is like an onion, like you're peeling back these layers. You had the layer of tragedy with your mother and what she went through with your dad, and then your brother, and now we're peeling back, it seems like, another layer of what you're going to go into here.
Yeah, so I'd asked them, hey, I feel like I went through all three intentions in one night. What do I do on night two? And I forget what exactly, but kind of had me like reaffirm, like, hey, did I merge back with myself, or did I fix everything I needed to? Essentially, was kind of what I went into, and um, the took the medicine again. Takes a little bit to kick in. Got the blindfold on, and the music's playing, and I'm back in my room with my wife, and she's playful, and we're kind of dancing around a little bit, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. And then something happened in the room, and it was gone. I was like, oh, like, I'm trying to think real hard, like if you wake up from a dream and you try and go back to it. I'm like trying to, like, oh yeah, let me get back to that moment because I was having fun. It was similar to the night one where I could see things, and it just kept going away. And what ended up happening, you mentioned the loop. What ended up happening is I ended up going into a loop, and I remember I was next to Mike, not Mike, our roommate, the other Mike, the one that had the octopus experience.
Okay.
He was next to me, and I remember I started making noises, and he said something to me. He's like, hey, stop, like, be quiet or something like that. And I remember thinking, he's not supposed to talk to me. Like, I was so mad at him.
Okay.
And I later and I'd like got up to go to the bathroom or something. I scooted my mattress like 2 inches over, like to get further away from him or something. Um, but yeah, I ended up getting mad and frustrated, and then I realized, like, hey, like, it's not his fault. I'm the one making the noise. Like, and so it kind of gave me a little realization there. But ultimately, I ended up not having my mask on, and I got in what they would refer to as a loop, where whatever you're doing just kind of repeats itself. It's almost like, okay, I sit up and then I lay back down, and then it's like, and then I'll just do that again. Or like things just seem like they keep repeating over and over, like somebody might do the same thing. Um, just real drunk feeling. I went up to see the shaman, and like there's a lady behind me, and while I was waiting, and I like almost fell down, and she was like unexpectedly caught me. But it was really scary, being in a loop, because I mentioned time a minute ago. Time kind of doesn't exist in that moment. It seems like what is repeating is lasting forever. Like seconds feel like minutes or hours. And I remember trying to get back to my wife and my kids, and I remember feeling it getting further and further and further away. And I remember having some moments that were so scary. I was like, I don't know if my wife and kids are real. I don't know if this is real, this loop, this repetitive situation, in the Maloka there, is real, or did I make up my wife and kids? Like, I mean, it was just that real that I was like, holy shit, like I just made all that stuff up. Like, and I'm not ever gonna get to see him again, you know? So scary. Um, and that went on, I'm gonna guess in real life for a couple hours, and so in there it seemed like,
Yeah.
all night was going on. And I don't remember what ended up kind of provoking coming out of it, but I remember what set me at ease and became of pieces. Um, I knew I couldn't be loud because Mike was there. So I remember kind of curling up and I was whispering to myself and I was talking to my wife and it made things real, like
Yeah.
telling her that I loved her and, can't wait till we get home and I miss you and sorry for the bad things that, all those kind of things. I don't remember all the specifics, but I laid there for probably 30 minutes talking to my wife, to myself, just real, real whispery, like to not disturb Mike. Um, and again, they talk about what you need versus what you want. And for me, I ended the night in a very good mood. I felt happy. I felt love, but it was very scary. And I think the lesson I learned is I need to appreciate what I have because in that moment they were gone. And, it really put a lot of appreciation for my family and my wife. And funny thing, interesting, I won't go in too deep because I don't remember all the details, but Mike woke up and the morning I told him, I said, look, man, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to bother you. And he's like, no, 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 it was perfect. He's like, I got angry at you and it triggered me of how I get angry. I think it was with his father.
Yeah.
And it took him down the path he needed to go down. He's like, it was perfect.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm sorry that I got upset with you, but it just kind of shows how connected we are. And it was just so crazy. Him and I like held hands and hugged that morning afterwards and like just felt this really strong connection because during our, medicine treatment, we had some interaction in the real world, so to speak, that impacted our, subconscious world, if you want to call it that. But very intense night. But a lot gained from it too, I think,
I remember that early morning when we sat in our circle sharing our experiences, and you were laying there with the blanket over you, and I wiggled your little toe.
That's like,
Your little toe
uh,
was just screaming at me, and I had to wiggle it.
yeah. Oh, that's so crazy when you're there, like how light and fun and just like
Yeah.
things don't feel heavy there. You get back to the real world and you got bills and kids and work and just that's been my biggest thing is trying to, when you're done with that, let go and go back to a fun, soft place where you can wiggle someone's toe.
I can count on one hand how many grown adult men's toes I have wiggled.
Well, I would say you're probably the first grown adult to wiggle my toe, Jesse.
So yeah, that was special. And to comment on what you're saying about somebody else impacting your journey unintentionally, but you're unintentionally impacting theirs. It was similar for me with Steven and Michael making it feel like a party for me on Tuesday night. Something I was always an outcast growing up, quite honestly, and it it was never invited to parties in high school or anything
Sure.
like that. And that experience felt like a party to me, one that I was invited to and that I had a lot of fun at. And for them, they
Awesome.
they didn't feel that way at all. They were going through it for whatever reason, but however their reactions were, them grunting around, leaning over, puking the whole time, I was like, this is sweet. So, it's kind of funny how we're told to keep to ourselves, but unintentionally what's going on. And it also has to do even with that dog barking there and your dog in your Astro
Yeah.
experience barking in response to it. So, you know, again, it goes to all these things connecting together over and over and over again. I've talked many times about what night three is or was about. It was ladies' night. I did a lot of sleeping that night. Um, how about you? What was Wednesday night like for you?
Not sleeping, I can tell you that. So before night three, you had told me because I think you went outside every night or a good amount outside, and I had not left my bed really, other than go to the bathroom and stuff. And so night three comes along, take the medicine, takes a bit to kick in. Hoping I see stuff because that was the cool shit, and not scary like night two. But it wasn't happening. So I take off my mask and I look around, and we have like an altar or a podium or something in the middle with some crystals and stuff on it. And I see a couple of the ladies on the other side of the room dancing up there, and I remember chuckling out loud, and I was like, all right, I got you. You're gonna make me get up there and dance because that's something I wouldn't normally do. If I dance, it's with my wife, and she better be glued to me, or it's not happening. And let me tell you what, I got up there and outdanced the ladies. I didn't dance as long as they did because I got tired, but man, I was like hands pumping to the beat. I was twirling around. I mean, everywhere. I was doing child's pose down to the altar. Like I was over there watching the band because at that point there was a live band playing, and I was like in the front row of a music concert. I was just like just getting it. And again, I would have never done that. And so I got a little wore out, got a little hot, and I was like, I want to go outside. And I remember seeing a lady flat down on the grass. And again, I laughed out loud. I was like, what is this lady doing? And I was like, I wonder if that feels good. And so I went over a few feet from her, laid down flat on the ground, and I was like, this is kind of nice. I think I talked to the ground for a second. And then I think that night there was a full moon or eclipse, or maybe it was starting to, maybe it was the last night. I can't remember. But I looked up at the moon, and I remember thinking, how did Jerry get up there? That would be so cool if I could go there right now. Didn't happen. So I like walked around and really observed people, and was just a light, fun night for me, really. I remember, which will come into play for night four. I remember Mike, our roommate, was trying to write stuff down, and I saw him writing stuff down that night. And then at the very end of the night, I remember over in the corner where we come into the building, into the Maloka, there's a chair there, and I was like,
That's the spot.
that looks fun to sit down in. And I remember going over to help her because it's the chairs they sit in, but this one was off to the side, like extra. I was like, "Hey, am I allowed to sit there?" And they're like, "Yeah." And I went over and sat down. I was like, "Oh, this is nice."
Yeah.
And I thought through different things. Like I kind of felt like I did what I needed to do that night. I was like, how do I do some of this at work? And like I got a few ideas of like, before a meeting, like just doing a little deep breathing exercise, or kind of put myself in a different spot in the house when I'm working to kind of break up the monotony and maybe keep the stress level down. I was just thinking through different things, and then come along you're trying to find a comfortable place to hang out, it seems. And so you go over to the window, maybe like 6 or 8 feet from me, and you're just kind of looking out the window. And I remember thinking like, man, I bet he'd like to sit in this chair, but we couldn't interact with each other.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I would say in summary, the big thing I got out of the third night was just be fun. Don't worry about what other people think. Just relax and have a good time. Um, and that's what I did. I think the next morning, I believe it was that night, because I'd been all over the place, and I come back and the dog was on my bed, and Raven was like, "Hey, do you want me to have her get up?" And I was like, "No, I just laid down on the floor and put my head. I used my mattress as a pillow, and the dog laid there." And I remember thinking, this dog's old. Like it needs the bed more than I do. And I remember thinking the same thing about my dogs. My dogs all sleep on beds now at the house instead of on the floor. Um,
That's a
but
big
yeah, a couple
rule for
people
me.
said something to me. They're like, I was like, look, the dog needs it more than I do. And everybody thought it was funny, but for me, it was as real as can be. This dog to me in dog years was like gray haired and old. And here I'm like, mid 40s. My body can handle laying on the floor more than that dog can, but yeah, it was just a fun, light night and, just lots of energy. I was wore out, man. I danced and moved around. I sat by the fire, watched the fire a little bit. Yeah, it was really interesting night. Fun.
Yeah, yeah. There's like I have a ranking of three spots to go to when you do that. I sat on night four especially. I sat in front of that fire for at least 4 hours and just watch them take that incense out of that fire every 10 minutes to go blow it around the Maloka. And you just got to watch the fire snap, and then they would put logs of wood in the fire, like right in front of you. You get to watch the sparks from the wood, and it was like an incredible. It was just this incredible grounding experience for me, and it got me into thinking like the first invention before anything was what I'm looking at right now is fire. Without fire, how do you do anything? And second was that spot you're talking about, that corner, which is kind of tucked away from everybody. Nice view out either side. That building, that Maloka, is honestly the best structure I've ever seen in my life. It built so beautifully. In the inside of it, the surround sound on the inside of it, the little geckos crawling on the ceiling up above you.
Yeah.
It just was such a special place. And you could tell how great the energy was inside that building. It's like this recharge. And then, of course the third spot's the hammock outside, man. I looking at the sky, and I just, because night one for me personally was, I'm listening to everybody throwing up, and it's like, wow, this is brutal to listen to. And you had your opinions on it and what helped you maybe associate something to get away from a habit. For me, it was, I just can't listen to this. I never have been able to. But by night four, when I was hearing it, I was like, yeah, get it out, get it out. I was encouraging that purging. But yeah, those are the top three places for me to go, and it's a really special place overall, is to be in front of a fire. I've gained so much appreciation for one, being outside, and then two, appreciating what's in front of me instead of thinking about what I'm going to do later. So night three goes by. Sounds like you had a better time than night two. Night four was fucking bananas. There was a point in night four where you tried to interact with me. You gave me that nod, like, and I'm like, no, Jason, no, not doing it. I'm sitting in front of this fire. Wait, tell me a little bit about night four. How did it put the bow on your
Um,
your experience, the icing on the
night
cake?
night four was the most painful thing I've ever gone through in my life. I tell my wife I have PTSD from it still. um, so I went long and short. I went into another loop, um, but they gave me a new question or a new intention. Um, and I talked to a couple people about it. I talked to the shaman. I talked to Meg that night. And essentially, what I felt like I needed to double down on was sex addiction. Like, I need to I didn't feel like that was quite fixed throughout this journey. And I realized that that was the bigger problem. I thought I was there for the anger piece, which was part of it, but I realized that there was way more carrying with that. And so I didn't really share with anybody there what happened in night four other than my loop, so to speak. But when the medicine kicked in, I was on my mattress and Mother Ayahuasca was trying to get me to go do something sexual with somebody there. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. This isn't supposed to do stuff in real life. This is just supposed to be the mind fuckery stuff.
Hmm.
And I was like, this, I can't do, I'm not messing things up with my wife. Like, no, like, you know, like, why would Mother Ayahuasca do this? Like, this is horrible. Like, just, and, you know, I was stuck to my bed and just fighting this urge in my, that was coming to my mind to try and do something. I was like, this is not okay. Um, And I think at one point I either asked for help or I went up and ended up talking to Diego. He was one of the shamans from an earlier night that was there helping that night. He was the younger guy, if you remember. Um, and he's like, "You're not going to do anything. There's people here, like trying to set me at ease." And I was like, "No, dude. Like, this is real, man. Like, I'm scared. I don't want to do anything. You know." Was scared to go near the middle of the room. Um, I think at one point I'd gone outside some. Uh, just heavy, man, like super heavy. Then, you know, I got up from the bed. I was scared to go to my bed. There was an association with my bed and that feeling. So I didn't go back to my bed the rest of the night. And that was pretty early on. But things just kept repeating themselves. You know, at one point I was in there on the toilet, fully clothed. I don't know how long I was sitting there, but I was just out of it. And somebody came in and was like, "Hey, you got to get out of the bathroom." I remember at one point I was like, "Okay, how do I break this cycle?" And I was like, "I'm gonna pour some of my water on the ground." And I saw the wet spot on the ground, and it just kept playing over and over. And I was like, "I can't change it. It's becoming part of anything new I do is becoming part of the
Wow.
loop that's happening." I could not change it. So I remember something that helped a little bit is the night before Mike was writing in his journal. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to write some stuff in my journal. And that will help like me to focus on what's happening. And those are unique statements. I'm not going to rewrite the same statement every time, right? And I remember I was writing to my wife. I made a few jokes. I don't remember. I've got them wrote down in my book here. I also remember because her and I have talked about time being something that humans made up. And I told her because I was in this loop that lasted forever. I was like, time isn't real, you know? And it was pretty sloppy writing, but I was able to make heads or tails of it. And I was writing to her, and I remember writing LOL to something that I had wrote, like we were texting back and forth. Like I was having a hoot there for a second.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it just kept repeating. And then finally, um, oh man, it got real deep. I've tried to get one of the guys to help me. He was doing the healing thing on me. It didn't work. At one point, which is a big no-no, people that are listening may not realize, but our phones are outside in our bags. And I was like, you know what? If I call my wife, that'll be real life, and that'll bring me out of this psychedelic trip that I'm in. And so I FaceTime my wife. It was about 5 in the morning for her, so whatever time that was for us. And she thought I was just calling her in the morning after we were done because I had done that a few times there.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just need to see you. And I saw her for a second, and then the guys came over and was like, "Hey, you got to get off the phone." I was like, "Hey, babe, I gotta go." And I hung up. They took my phone and put it in the front office. And then I was like, I got to break some rules because that worked. And so I was like, I'm leaving. And I started to walk up towards the front office, and the medic guy was like, no, 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 you got to come back. And I was like, I want to talk to, what's his name? Is it Jerry? Is Jerry the doctor there?
No, it was Jerry was the founder.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. But whatever his name is, the
Yeah.
doctor there. I was like, I want to talk to him. He said we could talk to him.
Yeah.
And they're like, you can talk to him in the morning. I was like, no, I want to talk to him now.
Wake him up.
Yeah, like I needed to get grounded and it wasn't happening. Things just kept repeating. And so finally, Diego sat out front with me and I said, look, man, I need you to talk to me. I need like tell me about yourself. Like I needed new, fresh things that weren't repeating. And you know, I was like, do you have a wife? Do you have kids? This, that, you know, and he'd share a little bit. He's like, look, you're trying to avoid what needs to happen to you. Like like let go. And I was like, I'm not going back to this thing. It doesn't end. I know how this works.
Yeah.
And so I ended up opening up to him. I won't share all the things on here, but just a lot of personal things about myself, struggles, about being molested as a child and different things like that. I just shared with him like I'd known him forever, for probably an hour or two, I'm guessing. And so, I'm starting to come down. Things are feeling good. It's very healing to share with somebody things that I've only shared with my wife, really.
Yeah.
Um, and he looks at me and he says, "They're calling last call. Do you want another drink?" And I was like, F no, dude. I just went through it tonight. I am not about to get another drink.
How many cups did you
Um,
have on night four?
I think I had two or three, not as many
Okay.
as I had. I was doing at least four, I think, and maybe five one night.
Right.
So it was way stronger, the medicine we had that night, and it kicked in quite a bit faster, I think, than other nights.
Coming back from Costa Rica, do you now feel more free?
I do.
I think part of that, before you continue, I'll just speak on it. And it's a realization I had earlier this week when I was having a meditation session is I feel more free. And why do I feel more free? It's because I don't have secrets anymore. And I think that's similar to what you're going through or what you went through was being able to share something that had been held inside for so long and only maybe being able to discuss it with like a very, very close loved one was that those secrets were finally, and just the fact that you even said it right here on a podcast right now, you don't have secrets anymore. So there's nothing, there's no reason for you to have any sort of weight inside your body to hold you down. And it's that way for me with what I had gone through with drug addiction. I was a drug addict. I'm not anymore. I don't have the secret of hiding in my basement and doing drugs anymore. I don't have any sort of anything holding me back from being exactly who I am and having a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, and I think the same way. I mean, I think, again, I went there to fix anger issues, which did, but the really thing that I realized, and it's funny because they told us that the stuff comes together at different times, and they mentioned getting the enema, and that's where I think the icing on the cake for me occurred, and I shared with folks. But I did want to share with people because other people had shared, some females had shared like some sexual abuse and different things, and I wanted to share that, hey, like I've been that person in some different instances, and I'm not happy with that. And it was important for me to share that. But I think the big, really thing that came out of it in the end, and it hit me again while I was getting the enema, how that happened. But things connected then. But I realized that, you know, my family growing up weren't bad people per se. Like they didn't beat me or anything crazy, but there wasn't a lot of like we didn't share our feelings and emotions. There wasn't a lot of physical hugs or things like that. It was me and my brother, so it was kind of a boy household with my mom stuck with us. But I remember at one point during ayahuasca, I'd had a couple of flashes of memories when I was a little kid, getting in my mom's lap when she was sitting in her chair. I think we were watching a movie as a family or something, and she just kind of held me, and I was like, I don't know, I was maybe 5 or 6 or something, and I realized that was the last time that my mom had like really held me, or that I remember really a lot of physical attention as a kid. And so you fast forward, and I was 10 or 12, and I had an older an older male babysitter that had, molested me. And I think at that point, what had happened for me is I connected physical sexual stuff to intimacy, to the physical, the physical touch and the sexual piece became together. And then throughout the rest of my life, that's what love meant, and then it was just this big hole you had to keep feeding, similar to drugs. Like, You smoke some pot now, and then you do that every day. Well, now I need something that hits different because that doesn't feel good anymore, and I need some coke or some heroin or whatever. And so then it goes into, just a whole slew of bad things you can go down the road there with. And so for me, one, having that connection and realizing where all these things in the timeline of my life fed into where I am today. Now I understand where things come from. And two, sharing that with a group I've never shared or been open. I'm like, no, I'm a guy just like sex, right? Like,
Yeah.
well, it can be extreme just like anything else. And so yeah, in the end I really had that big connection. And I think, like you said, huge weight lifted off of me, understand who I am today and how I got here, and still have desires. I see a good looking woman, I look, but it's more of like I realize that that's not something that I care about, and I don't stare. It's more of like, oh, cool, you know, and I try and move on for. I'm way more cognizant, way more aware of it. And me and my wife are way more open talking about things. She's like, "How are you doing with things?" Like, and I'll tell her, well, I did notice this person the other day. I probably looked a little longer, and like, we just talk through it openly. I'm not ashamed to speak about what happened anymore, in the current state still.
That's a huge tool for happiness in your marriage is being able to discuss those things comfortably and
Yeah.
making those uncomfortable conversations known from each perspective is so important for your future together. Because when you keep one thing from that person, this is something that I've learned from being divorced now is when you keep something from somebody and it might seem small, such as simple as looking at a girl at a Menards or wherever you are, and you keep it away, and then something else small happens, and then something else small happens, and then those things add up, and then where you're acting like we were talking about, where you're playing, you're interacting with secrets, and you're not able to give 100% of yourself to that person because now you're acting a little different because you don't want them to know the truth.
It's like any other addiction.
Yeah,
Like I was saying, it compounds, the secrets get bigger too, right?
correct.
Like, and,
Yeah,
and the next thing you know, like, you're not honest at all with each other or open with each other. And
right.
I'm very fortunate. I have an amazing wife that's helps me get to that point. It has been long before we went to do ayahuasca, but yeah, we've really had some really good dialogue, and our friendship is stronger. It's been huge. Same with my kids.
Yeah.
It's been a game changer for sure.
So what final question, what's integration been like for you? I know we talked a little bit about it throughout this podcast, but what we're let's see, it's May 23rd today. So we
Yeah,
are we 10 weeks removed?
yeah, probably
Dang.
about that. Yeah. I would say still doing great. Probably not where I want to be. I started off probably like everybody, nice and strong, got up and did yoga. I think you had sent out a link to somebody for meditation that I've used. If they do yoga and meditation, did that a couple times. Really helpful. And have kind of backed away from it a little bit. I backed away from the gym a little bit too. But started to pick that back up here recently. Me and my wife have done yoga like out in the front yard a couple of times, and we've talked about, and I've told her, I'm like, I just need to wake up 30 minutes early and do yoga. Like, I'm gonna feel better. It's just doing the hard thing. And again, I'm very fortunate. I've got somebody that's gone through this, not with me, but we both we both know where we're coming from, and so she helps try and hold me accountable, and she's happy to come along with me because she wants to kind of go back to or stay in that place, that we all want to coming home from doing ayahuasca. But her and I go for walks almost every day, try and enjoy nature and appreciate the things. We've got 40 acres, so we got plenty to appreciate where we live. Um, Same with the kids. I deleted my news app while I was in Costa Rica, and I still haven't watched any news really. Um, I've not got on YouTube. I used to just scroll on YouTube. I started scrolling on Facebook a little bit recently. I'm trying to dial that back.
Yeah.
Just trying to be off my electronic devices more, to be more present with my family. Um, because what happened is I get done with work, I want to relax, and they come in and want something, and I get frustrated because they're bothering me. And now it's almost like I'm bored. And so if they want something, I'm like, yeah, let's go look at that. Let's go, yeah, I'll fix you something. Let's go make a cake, whatever it is, like I'm way more pleasant to be engaged in those types of things than I was before. And it ebbs and flows. You have good days and bad days like anything else. I think the difference is when you have those bad days, you're more aware, like, today was a bad day, where that wasn't the case before. And again, me and my wife are been good to, she's like, hey, like, I feel like you've been getting a little frustrated. Like, is everything okay? Let's talk about it. And I can do the same with her.
Mhm.
So it's been really nice to kind of have a companion there to help each other out. And that, so fortunate that you guys are going at it alone, so to speak. I've got kind of an ayahuasca buddy here living with me that definitely helps, and we talk about, like, probably every day we'll talk about, not necessarily ayahuasca, but it's the same kind of path. We talk about what happens after we pass away, or hey, is this worth getting angry about? You're not going to care in a couple of weeks. Just those same type of mental behaviors or things that we felt there, we bring back into our conversations. I would say daily, multiple times a day. But in the end, a lot of work I think I need to do still to get back closer to where I was. I kind of, pendulum back and forth, and I would say I was off the screen. We went here in ayahuasca, and now I'm somewhere over here, and just trying to stay as close
Yeah.
to that coming home feeling as I was.
Two things. One, on the morning after night 4, you said something that stuck with me, and I want you to know that I haven't played my video game since I've been back. And
Really?
you said to me, you go, you're way too addicted to electronics. And of course, my phone broke halfway through the trip for good reason, by the way.
Yeah.
And it's what you're talking about, being present. And if the kids have something going on, instead of being selfish with your time, because we talked about earlier, what does time actually exist, or is it a constraint we put on ourselves, right?
Yeah.
At this very moment, your kids are paying attention to you. Your kids are teenage old, so it's even a little bit more special at that point, I'm sure, because they start to have their own friends and they start to go places. So for me personally, I've gotten so much shit done since I haven't been playing video games. Like
Yeah.
it's incredible. The second point I was going to bring up to you, and kind of like my final point, when you talked about going on walks and appreciating nature, I've begun hiking for the first time in my life. And I hike about 3 or 4 times a week. I try to get 15 to 20 miles in every time. And I just have to say, like, it's it's underrated. It's one of the most magical experiences that you can really do for yourself and for your body, is to maybe assimilate yourself with nature. And it really brings me back to what Costa Rica was, because it was not a hiking experience, but it was a lot of blending yourself with nature and like looking around and appreciating the birds. I've never looked at birds before in my life. Now I look at
Mhm.
every single bird. You know,
Yeah.
I even I've begun noticing owls in trees as I'm walking. I've never seen an owl in my life up until I had begun walking around. So I want to say to you, thank you for that call out. And I think I was on that path, but again, it's these little things, even though we're not supposed to affect each other's journeys. I think there's these little things that we say to each other that did have a really positive impact. And you, again, hopping on this podcast and doing this with me, again, brings me back to those days, and it grounds me again, and it feels like a reset back to March 15th, March 16th, when I landed back here in Minnesota. So I want to tell you thank you, and I want to tell you how much I appreciate you. And I think it's so cool that you and I got to do this experience together and form this friendship.
Yeah, I mean, likewise. I mean, I think we had we had our own little get together, right? We stayed up talking every night afterwards, and we definitely had some strong bonding experiences. And I think likewise, you guys at the end were like, let's take a fun picture. Jason, go hug that tree. And I jumped up and just hanging on in the air, hugging the tree. And I think for me, that was a picture I've gone back and looked at and shared with my wife, and it's a good reminder to like to be a kid. I was messing with my wife outside. I was running from her and I started skipping and just being playful and she was laughing and I was like, this was I think last night. Like we gotta be light. Like things are so serious and I think that's what got us to these points we were in is
Yeah,
things were so serious and so heavy and they don't have to be, like
right.
be present, enjoy life and have fun, like life's short. It's gonna be gone. It's like I said, this could just be a small moment in our journey is this presence we have on life and just enjoy it. Don't take things so serious. Easier said than done, my own
Easier
wisdom,
said
but
than done. But
yeah,
overall, I just think it's important to at least set aside 30 minutes of your day just to remember your rebirth, essentially, right? I'm almost contemplating throwing myself a birthday party on, March 14th instead of my normal birthday because that's kind of the day that I, you know,
rebirth.
rebirthed, right? Odd enough, that's my dad's birthday. So I'd hate to
There you
take
go.
take that away from him, but I might have to.
I'm sure he's happy with the present he got with you coming home the way you did because you've
Yeah,
done some big changes in your life. So
very, very large, very large. And um, this podcast is just going to continue. I'm even thinking about sometimes if I don't have anybody, I'm just going to go on solo for a half hour and just talk into this
Rhythmia
microphone.
just yeah, Rhythmia just sent an email about social media partners.
Okay.
There's a list of things on the email, but one of them talks about influencers and social media partners. I thought about it. You should check it out.
I think I should. I think that's a really good
Yeah.
idea. So,
Yeah. I think they're just trying to leverage people to help get the word out, I guess, and like what you're doing.
yeah. Yeah. I
Um,
I think it's important. So,
yeah.
well,
If
do you have
only everybody in this world could go through the journey we went through, it'd be a great place. But we have to have the yin and yang in life. So
it's a
not
dream of
everybody gets.
mine someday if I have enough funds to fund people from AA that qualify to go to this kind of thing because it changed my life. And I want to be able to share that with as many people as possible because I think if everybody got to do this experience and not everybody does, I've had some people try and they got denied for some different reasons. I think if everybody did this, there would be no more war and there would be a lot less hate. There would be a lot of people that are able to think critically and understand each other's perspectives a little bit better. And it would just make the world a better place. I know it would. So, do you
I
have
mean,
anything left to add?
yeah, it's just gonna say it's a shame that there's this cure fix out there for so many physical and emotional, traumas, addictions, whatever, and we're just not quite there as a person to make this acceptable, and so we go through lots of other things that don't work, unfortunately. But I agree. I think especially with the addiction piece, but there's PTSD and lots of other things out there that this really does work. It's real.
It's
It's
crazy.
not it's not just going and doing drugs. It changes people. And
You
I
gotta
hope
go
that
to
one
a
day
you
our
gotta go
country
to a
figures that out.
you gotta go to a different country to become a better person.
That's right. That's right. But and I'm super grateful that we did that and we got there, and I hope that at some point it gets to be more available for others to do.
Texas, Texas just approved the first round of doing ibogaine for veterans. That's on my list as ibogaine for sure.
Yeah. No,
Just because, I overall I still I 95% of the time don't have urges, but there's always that
yeah,
space, and
yeah,
you got to be strong.
yeah.
And I'm constantly at this point in my life trying to better myself physically, mentally. It's so important. It's so important for my kids. And my last my parents' last 10 or 15 years on this earth, I want them to die being proud of who their son had become rather than die remember, with, well, he went through all these things and then he didn't live up to the potential that we felt like he could.
Sure.
And I think revisiting these psychedelics is going to be important in my journey as well. So
Yeah, and I don't want to give my kids a reason to have to go do ayahuasca when they grow up either. I don't want to be part of the work they got to do.
yeah, yeah. All right, man. Well, hey, I appreciate you jumping on again. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
For anybody that was listening, like, subscribe, comment, please. Let's spread the word about this, and we'll have another episode in a few days.